confusion in the minds of people as to who God is. It is only in Islam that the knowledge of who God is clear. It's reasonable, it makes sense. It's not something which requires, mental gymnastics. Like when the Christian says, God is one, but he's three. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. This is mental gymnastics. In Islam, we don't have anything like that. It's clear-cut. And it is from this point, the starting point of Tawheed, the uniqueness, the oneness of Allah. And what this does for us also is, for those of us that are involved in any way in the sciences or in any of the philosophies, etc., that are out there as we study in the universities, etc., we have to always keep this concept of the uniqueness of Allah in mind, because so much of philosophy and science today seeks to give the attributes of Allah to His creation. Much of it seeks to do so. So it's very important for those of us that are involved in the educational systems here that we are wary, we are looking out for the various points at which Allah's attributes are being given to the creation. A classical example is that of Einstein's theory of relativity. This is something anybody who does his O-levels, he has to go through this. He has to learn, in physics, he has to learn E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, which translates into English as energy or matter can neither be created nor destroyed. That's how it's written out. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy evolves into mass or matter, and matter changes back into energy. It's a continuum. They split the atom with the same theory. The atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, atomic energy is all based on this theory of Einstein's. However, as the theory stands, it is for us a statement of kufr, a statement of disbelief, a statement in which one gives the attributes of Allah to His creation. Because when you say that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, you're saying energy is uncreated. It does not have a beginning. That is Allah. Allah is uncreated. He alone has no beginning. When you say it can neither be created nor destroyed, means it has no end. Allah is the one who has no end. All else is destroyed by Allah. It's created by Him, be destroyed by Him. So for a Muslim who is studying in such systems, though he is required to produce this on his examination, because if he says, no, this is a statement of kufr, he's going to fail his O-levels, and what is he going to do after that? Well, he has to put, in brackets after it, for example, by man. That's all right. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed by man. We're safe now, When we look at worship, because we're talking about the unity or maintaining the unity of Allah in our worship, we also need to understand what is worship in Islam. The term used is ibadah. And ibadah comes from the Arabic word abd. I'm sure most of you have heard this before. Abd meaning a servant or a slave, one who has submitted his will to his master. So what we're talking about here in ibadah is the submission of the human will to the divine will. And when we speak of the divine will to the will of God, we're talking about the legal will. Legal will, in Arabic they call it al-irada al-shar'iyya, as opposed to the creational will, al-irada al-kawniyya or al-mashi'a al-kawniyya. This is distinction made because there are some things in this life which we have no control over. It's the will of Allah, and man's will cannot interfere. It is the will of Allah that when you jump up, you fall down. No matter how hard you work and you try, you cannot jump and keep going up. This is already set. This is, we call it the law of nature. People again giving the laws of Allah to, because nature used to be one of the gods of Rome and Greece, So it becomes a nature god, But the point is that this is the law of Allah in nature. There's nothing, we cannot change, we cannot, our will cannot affect this. But our will comes into play in the choice. The choice of whether we obey God or we don't obey God. Allah wills or wishes for us that we obey Him. But He has given us a choice as to whether we will or we won't. Worship in Islam is making that choice to obey the will of Allah. Another way of expressing it is whatever is pleasing to Allah is worship. So we perform worship by doing whatever is pleasing to Allah and avoiding whatever is displeasing to Allah. Now, how do we know what is pleasing to Allah and what is not? Of course, this is not a matter of guesswork. We don't, before doing things, think to ourselves, well, is this pleasing to Allah? I think it should be pleasing to Him, so I'll go ahead and do it. No, it's not a matter of guesswork. It's not up to you and I individually to determine what is pleasing to Allah and what is not pleasing to Allah. It is the Sharia. The Sharia, the divine law, it has defined for us what is pleasing to Allah and what is displeasing to Allah. So we perform ibadah, we worship Allah by submitting to the Sharia. And of course, the Sharia is very clear, what its sources are, etc. And what we can understand also from this principle of worship is that it represents the essence of the message of the prophets. It's the essence of Islam, and it is the essence of the message of the prophets. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Verily, we have sent to every nation a messenger, commanding them to worship Allah and to avoid false gods. That's the essence of the message. That was what was carried by all of the messengers of Allah. Though today we have the issue of belief in God, because you have people who are denying God's belief, the Quran, when you go through it, what you find is most of the Quran, 99% of the Quran, is really confirming the worship, that worship should be directed to Allah. Not trying to convince man that Allah exists. There are a few verses, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created from nothing, or did they create themselves? This is a question for a person who thinks that there's no creator. You can ask yourself that. However, the vast majority of the Quran speaks to the issue of worshipping Allah alone. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has clarified for us in a number of his different statements different aspects of worship which we need to be very clear on, so that we don't consider some things not to be worship when in fact they are worship, and other things to be worship when in fact they're not worship. He has made certain statements to clarify for us that. For example, he said, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah." Calling, when you call on someone, This is prayer. This is worship.